Today we're going to be taking a look at how I sketch in general, but specifically looking for the right pose for the characters. Hey guys, White Manga here, writer and illustrator of Apple Black and BACASSI, published and serialized in the world's most diverse manga anthologies, Saturday AM and PM, respectively. And the characters we're going to be using as model for this video are obviously my characters, except for one. We got Billy here from Kings of Nowhere. I did a really cool podcast style interview / video thingy on the Saturday AM channel. You guys can go check that out. And I did it with the creator, Roosh. And we touch on everything, stuff about our series, art school, the list goes on. But we both drew each other's characters in our style, and here was mine. Killing two birds with one stone, we're going to be using this as a tutorial for you guys as well. So how do I sketch? Partnered up with Raid to bring this video to you guys. Raid Shadow Legends is one of the most immersive RPGs you're going to find on mobile and PC. Best part, it's free. It has all the features you would expect from an RPG title. Amazing storyline, awesome 3D graphics, giant boss fights, PvP battles, and hundreds of champions to choose from. Millions of people are already enjoying this game right now. Obviously I've played the game myself, lots of fun. But ye does not need to listen to me, for there are thousands of reviews to see. Naturally, this month is Raid's 2-year anniversary, and they've got like 6 straight weeks of anniversary events, tournaments running from March 1st all the way through April. Prizes everywhere. So if you want to support the channel, check out the game, use my link in the description, which will also come with an epic champion just for you guys. You're welcome. 100k silver, 50 gems, and 3 Ancient Shards. All useful. You're welcome. Now we're back from that. I like to keep my sketches pretty loose, my wrist pretty loose as I'm swinging that pen, whether you're working digitally or traditionally, it doesn't really matter. I'm keeping the lines pretty light, and I'm looking for the right line. I'm looking for the correct line. I'm looking for the accurate line. And that's kind of like the mindset you have overall when you're sketching. You're doing a lot of iteration, doing a lot of versions, knowing that you're going to come up with the correct one eventually. Now, the more you draw, you're going to be able to find the right line sooner rather than later. But that's essentially the gist in, I guess, layman's terms. The more you do this, the less lines you need, and overall, you just become more accurate as you go on. We'll kind of use a similar approach when we're looking for the right pose for the character as well, as you will see. Once I find the right line, that becomes the one that I go over maybe multiple times and darken it so it's clearer for the eye. Whether you're working digitally or traditionally, again, the eraser is your friend. Don't be afraid of making a mistake, especially when you can easily correct yourself. When doing sketches, it's good to take a step back and look at the overall illustration. Some artists like to flip the canvas or just look at it from a different angle just to make sure everything is on the up and up. The more you train your eye to be able to identify errors, the better you'll be. So let's explain what I think the key things to be looking for, like the basics, in very simple terms, what you should be looking for when you're doing your sketches. I'm sure there's more, but these are the ones that come to mind right now because I feel like they're the most important, or at least the first ones that come to mind. Ease your mind, ease your wrist, be open to change, sketch freely, don't be too rigid and stiff. Keyword is accuracy, but it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be really high up there, like the late 90 percentile. Take your time, don't rush too much. Don't be too slow either. Iterate. So whether it be looking for the right line or the right pose or the right anything, do several versions if you're unsure and then pick what you feel is the best one. Take a step back and make sure things are accurate, whether it be the pose or even if the pose is anatomically correct, say you're drawing a human being, make sure the pose actually fits what you're trying to achieve. For example, if the pose fits the character, would the character stand like this? Would the character put your hands this way and all of that? Make sure it fits the character. Make sure the drawing is engaging in some way. And maybe it might even be symbolic or it's an Easter egg to something else. It's up to you. A nice bonus would be if the drawing was dynamic, but you have to deal with more accuracy issues, say with foreshortening or perspective, which you're gonna have to deal with anyways. But some illustrations more than others. Keep all these things in mind. I'm sure there are more. You guys can let me know in the comments what else you guys have in mind when you guys are sketching. I would love to know. I'd love to hear it. I'm sure others will too as well. And with that said, let's dive into the sketch more and go through my thought process. By the way, the character Billy, I mean, have you ever seen a monkey in more drip? Didn't think so. Let's go. So starting off here with Billy, I like to have simple shapes like the circle here, the oval shape for the head, to just let me know where things go. Just simple shapes before I actually go into detail, right? You just add detail over time. And then we went with a pose like so, where he's kind of going to be looking in the opposite direction of Sano, almost like they're surrounded by enemies. I wanted to have maybe both of Sano's arms stretching out, but I changed my mind and decided to do something like this to show off Sano's powerful Oroda's arm. Those of you who read my series know what I'm talking about. And then draw Wheatworth in the forefront. I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to put it together, but as you can see, I'm resizing the sketch to get a better feel. Then I'm trying to see how it would look if they were in an actual space. It wasn't abstract where it was all different sizes of the character, where they're literally in some kind of space. How would it look if they were all together? So I'm drawing Sano's feet. And in order to get Billy at the back, Sano in the middle, and Weaver in the front, I have to have Sano crouch a little bit. And you can have like a cool dynamic crouch. Now I'm moving things around and then starting to go into detail on how Billy's gonna look, because obviously I'm not as familiar drawing this character. So playing around this pose, going into extra detail to see if I can actually nail the character and make sure it looks like the original. Also cool because I don't draw that many animals on this channel, or animal-like things. But after drawing it this way, I decided I wanted to do something different, just to see if I could do something better. And I opted for a different pose. Something where the character's a little more chill, a little cooler. Still looking in the opposite direction of Sano, and you will see once we go into more detail. Try to make sure it looks like the actual character. Sketches all around the face until I nail it. Make any appropriate adjustments. And I just keep going. I'm only going in with detail with the face pretty early on here, just to give me an idea of how it will look in the future. Especially a sketch that is to be worked on further or inked or whatever, is you essentially relaying a message to whoever's going to ink it in the future. In most cases, yourself. Try to make sure it looks like the character while also still keeping some semblance of my style. You see the arm holding the gun? I just have very simple shapes just to let me know where things go. No details at all, and details will come later. It's almost like two stages of the sketch where you have a very loose one, and then a more detailed one, and then you go on. Depending on who you are, you can skip one of the steps, or all of them. It's up to you. I also draw in layers. That's another key one, right? You draw step by step. Don't try to think of everything at once. So the first things first, try to get the overall body shape of, or the anatomy of the character. And then things like clothes, they can come after. It's almost like you're drawing it on the character. And that's all I'm focusing on here and making sure I get that right. Same thing now, trying to figure out the fingers holding the gun. In some cases, you might want to use reference. No problem. The whole point of reference, if done right, at least one of the ways done right, is to use reference so you don't need to use reference anymore. Like you do it enough times to where it then just comes to you. And drawing the gun, we don't have to worry about too much of the details of the gun because of the angle we're drawing from, so cool with me. And now we're just refining some of those lines. Again, finding the right line and then going a little darker with it. That way, when inking, we're thinking less. Don't be afraid to use the eraser again. Control Z is your friend if it's digital. Just use a regular eraser if you're working traditionally. Obviously, it'll be nice if you already have an understanding of adding folds to a sketch or to a drawing overall, understanding how to draw certain things like hair, eyes, all that kind of stuff. But this video is just focusing mostly on a mental mindset you have while sketching. And then I'm going to separate all the sketches into different layers so it's easier to edit and easier to work with. It'll almost be like I'm drawing each character separately and then putting them together in the final. And that way it's just easier to work with. I can resize them if I want or just move them around to get exactly what I want. And I think it's also cool to have Billy is this big monkey in the back, and then Sano, and then Wheatworth in front, who is a mutant but still very inspired by monkeys, and a few other animals, but monkeys mainly. So the whole drawing looks like this weird evolution of man. So I removed Sano and Wheatworth temporarily just to draw everything else. I changed the legs again. During this phase, you kind of have to be open to change sometimes, and I think this version has him a little more chill, I guess. Less in action, but I think it still works. I didn't even complete the leg before drawing clothing just because I've done it so many times. I didn't need to see the full thing. I can go ahead and just draw the clothing on top. But if you're new to all of this, do whatever you need to. Now putting in the shoes, using reference, finishing the sketch, and I think for the most part, we're done. So we just adjust that, place it where we want it, and then with Sano, just adding more details and how I want him to look. Just a basic gist. Drawn it so many times, kind of easier to put together. Adjust the anatomy a little bit. The arm looks a little weird, so you make that adjustment. And so we just keep on adding details until we're good. Keep track of certain parts of the body that come a little forward, so they will have this sense of perspective or foreshortening going on, like the back of the leg on the left, and how that's going to be interacting with the floor. Just keeping all that stuff in mind and drawing different versions to see which one works best. But in this moment, I realized that I didn't like the Sano pose crouching because it just looks like he's doing the Busset challenge. Okay? Does Sano look like someone who does the Busset challenge? Then think so! So we make those adjustments. Maybe have the leg on the left, kneeling, keeping track of any sense of foreshortening again, if it's gonna be coming forward, backwards, it's gonna be hidden, the perspective, keeping all of that in mind, getting the overall shape right, and then adding in details later. Then I also changed the position of the hand because I wasn't feeling the fingers too much. And I also wanted to show the symbol on his hand, so I'll move that around. And I also like how the fingers are positioned now. Keep in mind that sometimes when you move certain body parts, it's going to change certain positions of certain muscles, but in this case we don't have to worry about that too much because for the most part it's covered by clothing. And then we ink. Depending on how you inked, it's easier to add in the color flats, especially in Clip Studio Paint if you worked with vector lines. But even if you worked in raster lines, it's still easy to fill in the colors, the flats. I have several videos where I touch on stuff like this, like I think I did it in the how to animate in Clip Studio Paint. You guys can go watch that, or just how to color. But if you guys want a separate video doing that, just let me know and I'll be happy to oblige. But you just fill in the flats however you can, and then I'm putting in the rest of the color, adding in the mood on a separate layer, linear burn, reduce the opacity on a dark color based on the environment. Do the same for another layer called the shade layer, where we then go into detail about the parts that we want filled in with, you know, some form of shade, where we're shading in parts of the character. You do the same thing for the highlights, but maybe a different blending mode, and on and on. Again, I have separate videos on how to color, especially with this cell shading anime kind of style of coloring. Do the same thing to all the characters, and then find an interesting way to have them pop from one another so it doesn't look all blended together. In this case, I opted for a warm light coming from above, hitting the characters so they stand out from one another, but you could also have done it with maybe a stroke, if it fit what you were going for, maybe a white outline or a black one or a thicker one across each character so they pop out a little more, or you could have really sold it with line variation, thicker lines for characters closer to the viewer. It's up to you. I wanted to do this one because I thought it would really pop, especially against the eventual background that we painted in. Also similar to the reference. Then just adding all the sauce that we normally do, and then you're good. And for the most part, those are the main things, the key things I think about when putting together my sketch. Again, you guys can leave in the comments other things that you guys do. I'd love to hear that. And that's it for the 2.5 people that made it to the end of this video. Thank you. Please go smash that subscribe button and hit the bell so you stay notified each time I upload absolutely anything. Turn on all notifications and follow me everywhere on social media. Everything you could possibly need will be linked in the description below, including Raid Shadow Legends. Use my link in the description if you want to support the channel. Check out some of my other videos. It's White Manga, and I'm Audi 9000.